we get onto the subject matter at hand, which of course is David Moyes and Tim Steidten, I feel the need to defend myself, and I must apologise for taking up your time on this. There was a besmirchment on my character yesterday. Some scurrilous accusations made against me on these very pages. It started off on YouTube comments about what I was wearing, and anyway, in the end, I got a little bit fed up with it because, quite frankly, I'm quite happy to discuss West Ham. I'm less keen to discuss what I'm wearing. So after 3 or 4 messages from the same person, I muted them. I blocked them from the comments on this. Clearly, they were irked by such a thing, so they started up what can only really call a social media campaign. Started posting pictures of me online and attaching it to sort of various West Ham supporters groups and whatnot, and it started to gain a little bit of traffic, so I just felt the need to really sort of defend myself, really. I just wanted everybody to know that some of the accusations that were levelled against me, and I feel they could have chosen better photos, quite frankly, but I would just like to say I absolutely refute any of these allegations. The suggestion that I would appear on a video wearing anything other than official West Ham merchandise, I find absolutely disgusting. I absolutely refute that. We take our role as fashion icons very, very seriously at Hammers Chat, and we would just like to pledge that henceforth, going forward, we will only be wearing the finest quality designer merchandise, because we understand that you guys would expect no less. Okay, I am going to admit this now, a little bit of confession here. I got suckered in by some of the narrative with Tim Steidten and David Moyes. I absolutely did, there's no doubt about it. I did smell a rat, as you might remember, halfway through when that Alex Scott story broke, and I did think that there was an agenda by some against David Moyes, but I can't say that I didn't buy into somebody's story that Tim Steidten and David Moyes didn't get on, that it was so bad Tim Steidten was going to leave. I was going to say, remember all that? I mean, it wasn't very long ago, let's be fair, was it? It actually looks like that. I mean, a lot of people got it very, very wrong. And as I say, let me put myself at the forefront of that to start with. It appears that there was no angst, there was no distrust. So where did that come from? I mean, so that's really, really interesting to know where these negative accusations came from. People making up rumours that Tim Steidten was about to walk away because he couldn't get on with David Moyes, that they hated each other. I think the first little glimmer that we got that wasn't the case was when there was that West Ham event, and actually they were photographed together, and people had actually seen them. They didn't dine on the same table, but their tables were next to one another, and I've heard firsthand from people that were there that actually there was a series of phone calls that came in, and then Tim Steidten would go and sit next to David Moyes, and they were looking at stuff on the phone, and they were laughing. I don't know what they were laughing at. I think it wasn't so much that they were looking at funny memes or anything like that. I think what was clearly happening was Steidten was having a little bit of joy with the recruitment process, and he was telling David Moyes. So I think by the end of the transfer window, and we'd all seen Tim Steidten in the private jet flying all around the world securing these signings, I think the penny had finally dropped that actually not only these two men were working quite close in hand, but the whole transfer council or transfer committee was working. And I think that's absolutely brilliant. Now, I think it's probably worth mentioning. I think a lot of us probably muddied the roles. We didn't understand the actual role of what a director of football was, and I don't think that's anyone's fault. I think it is. There is ambiguity there. There's a lot of grey area. It's hard to know exactly what these people do for a job, and I would imagine it varies from club to club. It does appear, though, at West Ham that Tim Steidten's role is as a closer of the deals, and it is to build more of a scouting infrastructure. That's it. In terms of identifying players, this is what we've heard all along, that there is a transfer council, a transfer committee, and the transfer committee is David Sullivan, Mark Noble, Tim Steidten, and David Moyes. David Moyes has the final power of veto. Now, what we'd actually heard on this was that David Moyes had become something of a megalomaniac. He'd become power crazed and he was annoying everybody else. We now know that's far from the truth. It actually looks to me, from the outside looking in, that there have been numerous recommendations from, I'd say, everybody on that council and committee, aside from David Sullivan, who's obviously just sort of overseen it. We hear that Alvarez, Edson Alvarez, actually be scouted by Mark Noble. obviously it's quite clear that David Moyes has wanted James Ward-Prowse for quite a while. So I mean, that's not even worth debating, really, is it? Let's be honest. I think it's been suggested that Kudus had been actually recommended by everybody. Firstly, Kudus had been suggested as one of a potential replacements for Lucas Paqueta by Tim Steidten. However, Mark Noble had also said, I've seen this guy play when I was over scouting Edson Alvarez. And also at the point where Edson Alvarez had been suggested over 6 months ago, David Moyes had taken in a couple of Ajax games as well, and he'd also seen Kudus. So actually, rather than it being proof that this transfer council and transfer committee wasn't working, I would suggest it's actually the opposite. It was proof that it was working. They came to an accord and they said, OK, let's go with this guy. So we've got definitely one from Mark Noble, definitely one from David Moyes, one who seems to be done by committee, and then of course the final one is Mavropanos, which again, as we understand it, was Tim Steidten's recommendation. That seems like a pretty cohesive unit to me. That really does sound as if that's a group of people all sort of clubbing together and doing what's best for the club and doing what's best for the team. And sort of any suggestion that David Moyes wouldn't play Edson Alvarez, I think that was pretty much, well, that was crushed as a rumour straight away, because not only has he played him, he's played him in a couple of games. He started him, actually, when Souček was available as well, because he played Lucas Paqueta on the left-hand side. And he looks, as I've said before, to the manner born, he looks oven ready, doesn't he? I don't mean cooking, but he looks oven ready for the Premier League. So I don't see any issues there at all. But it does create other questions, which is, why was there this narrative? Who was spinning this stuff? Because it's quite clear that so much of it were lies now. Now, I understand that David Moyes is not the most popular manager. I understand that. But it was almost a case of it, and you might well remember me saying this, I did wonder, if David Moyes is going to go and David Moyes be sacked, at least let it be for the things that he's done or he hasn't done. But actually, but I did feel at the time, and you remember me saying that video, there was a load of stuff being attributed to him, which I didn't think had happened anyway. And now we get to this situation, and it actually looks a little bit silly. As I say, I've got to put myself in for this. I got accused of flip-flopping a lot, of changing my mind, and I do. I don't claim otherwise. I did. There's been points I wanted David Moyes to leave. Then after we won the Conference League, I thought he deserves to stay. And then I got suckered in by a lot of the propaganda as well. And I was thinking, maybe this isn't working. And we did take a long time to sign players. Then we started signing players. I'm thinking, hold on, this actually looks like it's starting to work. Now we're 4 games in. And, I mean, it's all looking pretty healthy. And, I feel a little bit silly for at some point even, sort of doubting David Moyes. But the football gets pretty dire at some points, doesn't it? So that's just the way it is. I certainly don't feel there's any currency and I don't just mean in football, I mean in life, for being so dogged and determined and stuck on one decision that you'll never change your mind. I don't think actually there's any value in that. Anyway, so I think it's probably normal to have a little change of your mind when presented with new evidence. And I think that the thing that probably worried me about it is what we were seeing reported wasn't actually evidence at all. They were just rumours. And it just goes to show you can't actually, the proof of the pudding is in the tasting, so to speak. The other thing, just thinking about Tim Steidten, was the more I think of it, I don't know how much money he's on, right? But let's say, I think it's safe to assume that he's on over £1 million a year, right? It might be 2 million, I don't know, whatever. But let's say he's getting £1 million a year and flying round the world on private jets. I don't even know why I was even suckered into believing that this guy might not be happy. I mean, that's not a miserable existence, is it? And also, to assume that he was brought in and then we weren't going to use him, again, was a hell of an assumption. I think Tim Steidten's doing exactly what he was brought in to do, and I think he's doing it really, really successfully. I think Tim Steidten's been a really, really good acquisition to the club. I think it's an important one. And I think absolutely far from David Moyes being annoyed about it, I think David Moyes probably welcomes Tim Steidten, because I tell you what Tim Steidten does. Tim Steidten is a closer of business deals, and that's something we have struggled with. He is a specialist at it. we identify the player, or the council identifies the player. David Moyes has the final say, so yes, I want this guy. And then Tim Steidten goes out there. Tim Steidten deals with the agents, so David Moyes doesn't have to. David Sullivan, let's be fair, we don't want him dealing with agents and stuff like that. It can be a little bit of a train wreck at times, can't it, when he gets involved as well. And Mark Noble is not experienced enough at doing this. I'm quite sure Mark Noble's probably learning on the job from all of the people concerned. So out of the committee, he's probably the one doing his apprenticeship. But already Mark Noble is showing his value as well. And I think he deserves praise as well as David Moyes and as well as Tim Steidten here. But it's Tim Steidten is the specialist, the closer, and I bet David Moyes is really, really pleased. Actually, saying, I know I've identified this player. I want Edson Alvarez. I want Kudus. This is the guy that's going to fly over there and actually close the deal, and now I'm confident not only is he going to close the deal, he's going to bring the player back on the plane. A bit like me with James Ward-Prowse in the van. We're deal closers. We get the job done. Anyway, there you go. I'd just like to say I think it was worked out. I would have really liked another signing. I remember doing a video just before the Kudus signing. I said 2 more players, and I meant Kudus and a striker. 2 more players, and I think we could be really, really dangerous. I still think we are, dangerous, but had we got that additional player, I think we would have been right in with a shout of getting another European place this season. Hey, we still might, but by and large, did I think it was a 10 out of 10 transfer window? No. Okay, it probably wasn't 10 out of 10, but I tell you what, I think it was 8 out of 10. I really do. I think we spent the Declan Rice money really well. And when you cast your mind back to the fact that we were going to waste it, going to be a load of old players, going to be a crap players, the new director of football was going to walk out, David Moyes couldn't work with anyone, David Moyes was going to have no coaching, we'll deal with coaching team in a day or two. All of those things, it was all so negative, and actually you get to now, and there we are, up in the European places in the league, undefeated, beating a couple of really good teams. Well, one Brighton. We've done really, really well so far. Looking forward to a European campaign. Certainly, I don't know about you, maybe a little bit of confidence. We might even get out of the group in this one as well. 3rd season in Europe. I mean, it's actually quite remarkable. So I think when you look at it that way and you look at where we are now, you know what, I just think, hey, transfer window, Steidten, Moyes, Noble, I'll happily take the 8 out of 10. Just a little bit of legal stuff at the end, because someone's clearly got a bit of a hard-on over the past couple of days. I would just like to point out that I am not pretending that this is in any way official. I can't even believe I'm doing this. That is in any way official merchandise. It's just an old T-shirt which I've scribbled on. It's not for sale. We're not trying to sell it. We're not trying to pretend we're Umbro or Betway. It's a joke about Bet Paquette. It's just a joke, Some people take this stuff far too seriously, and quite frankly, some people need to get a life.